Welcome back, and we are pleased to have in our studio Senator Ron Wyden. Senator's not running for re-election this time around, but it is election season.
I heard that.
Yeah, you might have heard a few things about that, and a lot of people, that's on their minds. And one of the big talking points of this election is the economy, certainly a top priority for people who are running and top of mind for a lot of citizens. The White House celebrating some lower inflation numbers and a strong labor market. But working families, let's be honest, are still feeling like groceries are expensive. Housing, getting your first house is almost an impossibility for people of moderate means. What more needs to be done to help those working families?
Well, the first thing we should do is not make things worse. And this idea of the big grocery merger, Kroger's and Albertsons, this would be the biggest food merger in American history. And I don't think that makes sense for all those working people who are getting beat up with the price of meat and the price of milk. And what I'm doing is focusing on the middlemen who are driving up prices. For example, the pharmaceutical benefit managers in terms of health care. I think with respect to food, I'm a markets guy. I believe that marketplace forces are the best way to go. But if the market is getting cracked up, and we're seeing some of that in food, we're going to have some guardrails.
Let's talk about housing, too, because obviously there's a shortage of housing, and specifically in Oregon, but all throughout the country, and housing is expensive. How do we address that issue?
The best thing that can be done is to increase supply. And, you know, Democrats aren't supposed to call themselves supply-siders. I am a supply-sider on housing, and I've introduced two major bills. A low-income housing tax credit called LIHTC, and a middle-income housing tax credit in order to help our workers who are just trying to get a chance at the American dream.
We continue to hear, even though Oregonians support access to abortion, that a federal ban could be on the table. It's one of these, again, issues in the political landscape right now, if Republicans were to win big in November. Donald Trump says he doesn't support a federal ban on abortion. Is this just a scare tactic to push this abortion issue throughout election campaign?
Remember, he named 3 judges who overturned Roe versus Wade. And as far as I'm concerned, he is just as out of step with his weird dancing that we've seen recently as he is with Oregon values. And you see that clearly on matters like choice, where I just mentioned Roe versus Wade. You see it on the question of climate. You know, we've had the toughest fire season ever in terms of burns. And then, of course, we want fair taxes for all, and he's for the brakes for people at the top. So he is just way, way out of step with Oregonians.
Let's step out on the coast. You've been out to the coast to the pushing of the Port of Coos Bay. Is that project still alive?
I'm hopeful. You know, I've been working very closely with them, as has Congresswoman Hoyle, and the reality is that all of the tests that the government is looking at in terms of preparation and having a real plan, a detailed kind of plan, they're meeting. So put me down as hopeful. I hope we'll hear by the end of the year.
Another project on the coast is that wind energy project that's now on hold. BOEM halted that project off the coasts of Brookings and Coos Bay. What do you think should happen next with that project?
Well, I don't buy the idea that you can't have both wind and environmental protection and protect the communities and the fishing families. And I continue, along with Senator Merkley and the delegation, to look for a way to secure both.
Speaking of secure, do you feel confident that this election will be fair and secure?
I'm on the Intelligence Committee, so I can't get into all the details, but I will tell you that I and a number of my colleagues are still concerned about foreign influence, foreign misinformation, and foreign interest in our election.
And this election, obviously a presidential election, polls show it remaining fairly neck and neck between Vice President Harris and former President Trump. Obviously, you're a Harris supporter. What is your message as a Harris supporter to those voters possibly still on the fence?
Well, I think she's talking about the issues we've been talking about, the price of food and health care. I like her plan for seniors, more home care for seniors as an alternative to institutional care. Mostly, she's got grit. The same thing that the Ducks showed on Saturday when we beat Ohio State. I got a book coming out about grit. It's also called Chutzpah. We Jews call it that. And it's about taking on the odds. She's going to take them on. She's going to win the election.
That book's coming out in a couple months?
Couple months.
All right, we'll have to have you back and talk a little bit about that. All right, thank you so much, Senator Wyden, for stopping by our studio.
Thanks for having me.